This has Spurs fans divided, as in ESPN's latest mock draft, they have a Lithuanian 6'6" guard heading to the San Antonio Spurs, but the fit is extremely questionable, with his feel for the game being great, but Spurs fans being very unsure where he fits in the long-term future. We have to dive into Kasparas Jakucionis and his potential fit with the San Antonio Spurs and whether this makes sense. And honestly, I think it makes less sense than most people are giving it credit for. Dive into all of that. Plus, we have some comments from Jeremy Sochan on Chris Paul, as it reveals a lot about the Spurs' future backup point guard situation, and some very interesting comments as well from Pater John Holt about the new Spurs arena. A bunch of great stuff coming up in this episode of Spurs Digest. But before we get into the video, very quick reminder, 65% of you watching this video are not subscribed. We're only 250 subscribers away from 6,500. It's a huge goal, so if you wouldn't mind hitting that button, supporting us for having Spurs content here on YouTube for free every single day. Let's dive into the video, and I want to start just very briefly on a little note about this new arena. I know there's some controversy, some people don't want it, some people do want it. Regardless, I just wanted to take a quote from Pater John Holt recently about the situation, and I just thought this quote was very nice to hear about the way the organization is being run as a whole. So he basically just said, look, I think a lot of times we are rooted in the mindset of scarcity. If we do this, we can't do that. And I think there's a new and growing mindset in San Antonio that we can do both. We can do we can do this and do that. And I just think that this is the reaction I'm seeing from a lot of people on this quote too, is like, that's a nice thing to hear from your organization who's changing the guard now, new general manager, new head coach, which is crazy, your new future superstar in Victor Wembanyama. We can do a lot of things. Something that the Spurs haven't done a ton of in the past, make that big trade for a superstar like we did for Fox. We're hearing all kinds of stuff for about this offseason, whether it's related to Giannis or KD or what have you, right? Even the draft. We can do this, sign a big contract, and trade for a superstar, something like that. I know it's talking more about the arena, which is very interesting too. I like the idea that this can be a big place that can add to the convention scene in San Antonio. It can make it more walkable, more accessible to the downtown. Link the two downtowns together if you have that walkway, overhead walkway. So just thought it was an interesting quote. Maybe leave your thoughts on it down below. Won't dive into it too much, and I won't be diving into the economics of the arena. A bit above my pay grade, but very cool stuff regardless. But I want to move on to some basketball stuff now, and Jeremy Sochan. So Sochan is now in the Philippines. He's doing a lot of great stuff over there, and he was interviewed recently, and he had a lot to say, some about Wemby, some about Pop, some great words. But I want to focus on what he had to say about Chris Paul, because I think this kind of paints a little bit of a picture for the future of our backup point guard position. So what he had to say here, I'll actually put it this way. I didn't know what to expect with Chris Paul coming. To me, when he came, I think I was amazed at how much he loves the game. And he went on to say, look, the things he sees on the court are amazing. And I learned a lot from, being by his side, working with him on the court, off the court, during games, during practice, film. I learned a lot. And Jeremy Sochan, of course, had some experience as a point guard for the Spurs. Point Sochan as well. So cool that he's learning a lot of this from Chris Paul. But again, we look at the Spurs depth chart going forward. That backup point guard position is really in question, assuming Stephon Castle gets that starting job next year, which I think he should. And Chris Paul, if he came back, hey, it'd be great. But he just recently celebrated his 40th birthday a couple days ago. You can see there, 40 years, 2 days old. He had a good season for the Spurs, 8.8 points, 7.4 assists, and he helped lead that offense. His best three-point shooting year in 4 years under the Mitch Johnson pace and space type of offense. And again, I just wonder, with the effect that he has seemingly had on so many of the players, Jeremy Sochan is just the most recent guy to speak about this. Sochan had a solid year as well. Now, again, he was injured a bit, but when he was playing, especially at the start of the year with CP3 and Wembanyama, he was putting up 17 points a game for a little stretch there. But Chris Paul, I got to ask you guys, would you bring him back as a 40-year-old? Because that's the big question heading into this offseason. Sochan seems to really like Chris Paul. A lot of the players seem to really like Chris Paul. He brings a lot to this team, not only on the court, but off the court, mentoring all of these young guys, right? And as much as maybe I'd like to have him around the organization, even if he does decide to retire, I wonder if that's going to be the case, because I believe his family is elsewhere. I believe in California. I could be wrong about that. So he might not want to stay in the city. There's some questions as to how long he'll actually be around the org, but it seems like he's had a very, very good impact. So I want to hear your thoughts on that too. But now I want to get into this. So talking about this backup point guard position, there's a lot of talk of whether we'll trade for someone, sign someone, bring Chris Paul back, Maybe Castle will still be off the bench. Please, no, that doesn't even really make sense. Like, I know Fox is, or sorry, I think I said earlier Castle was going to be the starting point guard. That's going to be Fox. How did I even say that? De'Aaron Fox, I just forget sometimes that he's here. De'Aaron Fox, and then Stephon Castle, starting 1 and 2. I'm sure some of you have already called me out in the comment section. I'll be putting this timestamp there. But regardless, that backup spot, say Vassell starts, Castle off the bench, I don't think that's what's going to happen. Looking forward to what the Spurs are going to do with their guard position, one option is the draft. And I get it on one hand, but I wanted to bring up ESPN's recent mock draft that has a certain player, Kasparas Jakucionis, going to the Spurs at number 8. He's a point guard, shooting guard out of Illinois. Kasparas Jakucionis is 6'6", 205, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and I'll play some footage. He's an incredible playmaker, right? The thing with Kasparas Jakucionis is he's a great playmaker. He's not super athletic. That's kind of the downside with him, but he plays with a great feel for the game, and his shooting, while his college shooting percentage wasn't that amazing, he has shown incredible flashes at the free throw line where he's hovered between 85 and 90% for certain stretches, even back when he was at Barcelona playing in high school. In college, looked like a great player when the ball was in his hands. And so when ESPN goes out and says, look, the Spurs could go for, where is the quote here? Here it is. The Spurs should be attracted to Jakucionis' perimeter shooting, unselfishness, and ability to play both guard spots, a skill set that gives him avenues to becoming a quality supporting player on an NBA roster. That makes sense as a developmental investment for the long run. I get it. Look, I'm always someone that says pick the best player available. Me personally, I have Kasparas Jakucionis right around the top 10. I don't have him as high as 8. I think at 8, there's some other good options. I know Derek Queen's one of these options. Look, there's so many names. I think Jakucionis makes sense as a longer-term investment. However, I think if you draft him, you are hoping that he is kind of your sixth-man point guard right away. The problem with him is that in this Spurs system, with De'Aaron Fox likely extending this summer, with Stephon Castle locked up there as well, there's not going to be many avenues for a guy like Jakucionis to get the playing time that he probably deserves to flourish into what he actually can be. And I think for what he brings as a young player, it could make sense, but I think there's other options out there, whether through free agency or trades, that would make more sense for the Spurs, again, if we're looking long-term. And at number 8, there's so many other guys. Another guy like Concanupple, if he's available, fits the Spurs right now, right? He's kind of one of those plug-and-play guys, whereas Jakucionis can be that. But the thing, when I watch him, this is my opinion as well, he needs the ball in his hands a lot to be incredibly effective. And that's what we saw a lot at Illinois. Not to mention, his defense was very questionable. His effort is there. He doesn't really lack the effort. He has a great feel for the game. But he had one dunk all season as a 6'6" guard, and he focused mainly on just feeling the game out, trying to figure things out as he went, which I really like, and that style of play has worked a lot more in recent NBA, again, with a guy like Jokic, of course, who is really showing that you don't need to be the most athletic guy to dominate the court if you have incredible vision and you can have a good feel. That's what Jakucionis brings. But again, when we take a look at, the stats there, fine. The 3-point percentage, again, not a big worry to me because his free throw percentage is good. His mechanics are good. And, in college, it's tough. I think all the signs are there for him to be a good shooter, maybe off the dribble. Field goal percentage is fine. He was very good at the rim. 65% of his shots came at the rim. So it's this guy's one of these guys that likes to get to the rim despite not being that creative. He's a little bit creative, I should say. I just mean not that athletic at the rim for a bunch of crazy finishes. He is creative and crafty when he gets to putting shots up over defenders. But, again, his strengths are pick and roll upside, 3-level score, shooting and effort. Good. But his athleticism and defense leave a lot to be desired. I think it could make sense, again, as a long-term investment, but I need to hear what you guys have to say. Looking at what the Spurs backup point guard situation is, I don't mind the idea as a backup point guard. I just have other names there who fit the Spurs better now, especially if we're looking to make other moves this offseason to turn this team into a contender right away. Jakucionis could be great, or he could kind of fade out a little bit, because how often have we seen those kind of combo guard guys? He's 6'6", but he's kind of a combo guard, point guard, shooting guard, but he kind of needs the ball in his hands to play offense. And he's not great on the defensive end, especially against very fast opposing point guards. So you probably have to put him on the shooting guard. And those hybrid guys that can't really find a position between one or the other, unless they're incredibly creative and they give you a lot back offensively, they tend not to play a whole lot because there's not a lot of situations where he'll benefit you. So I think the playmaking will be good. I think the scoring will be good. I'm just not convinced he's the fit for the Spurs. I just don't think that this makes sense for San Antonio. And look, nothing against ESPN. I think it's just, look, they probably have Jakucionis at 8. Spurs are picking 8. It makes sense. Jeremy Woo made some good points, but I need to hear your thoughts because I'm seeing some Spurs fans say, yeah, why not? I mean, this fixes kind of a bit of a guard situation for us, and he could be a fantastic backup going forward. Hey, who knows if he ever evolves into the starter. But at the same time, like for me, myself, and some other people I've been talking to, like even Keenan, who's done a full mock draft, it's like Spurs don't need him. That's not the kind of guy that we need right now. I'm all for drafting best player available. He's not my best player available at number 8 in the draft, and I don't think he's a fit, but I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Watch some film, get some information on Kasparas Jakucionis. The Lithuanian guy feels like a Spurs pick, but I'd love to hear from you. That'll do it for this episode of Spurs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. 6,500 subs is so close. Thank you all for supporting us every single day. I've been your host, Josh Gosse, and I'll catch you in the next one.